Hello everybody, Shadow here, and today we're playing MineVille. I did try to record before, did not realize that my mic was off, and I apologize greatly for that, but to play MineVille. I've already gotten a house set up because of me having played yesterday. I was trying really hard to get a video out yesterday for my birthday, but I kind of failed, as you can probably tell, as there was no video yesterday. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cough, but let's go to the city, or maybe we can go to the resource world, get some stuff, and I can show you guys what I've got. Sorry guys, I got a bit of a cough, as they just said. I need to stop repeating myself. Okay. Fortunately. Oh. I really want to apologize, I do not have my mouse right now. I am letting someone else borrow it. So I am kind of dealing with just the mouse pad. So if you see me struggling, please know this is because I kind of can't get it to work right. I'm going to go mining because I do need deep slate, because I'm going to have like a dock theme for my I'm going to have a dock theme for my city, which I am calling MineVille. I was trying to go with MineVille because of that, but unfortunately someone else said that I would have that idea. Here, I might play with some friends, might record, might not sure yet, but if I do, I will be sure to post it as soon as I finish. This is not very interesting of a Sorry guys. I might actually move on this lapis and then I'm gonna find a different spot. Okay. Actually, this isn't too bad. Ugh. So it's definitely been here. But they could have missed something. So it's a shot to check it out. Nope. But yeah, I'm at a different spot again. This is not the best spot. I did not use jungle wood that much.
No.
So I guess we'll go back. I'm coming. My apologies, everyone. I'm back. I have Casey with me, and we had to go in here so she didn't get attacked by the dogs. This is not a good spot, but I could try to see what I can do to make it work. Find a cave or something. Right now I'm just on half a deep slate. Can you see? Can you see? I can't pet you while I'm trying to play, you know it, right? Sorry guys, my cat's being very affectionate. I'm going to see how if I can go mute. I'm back, guys. And this is good. Oh, someone's starting a farm down here. And then it fell. Casey, you're making it very hard to do this, you know. Oh. Thank you for moving. I don't know how much of fighting and stuff I'll be doing, but I might eventually, one day, go for, well, I don't mean to do that. Might one day go for a, oh, this is someone's base. I feel like I'm trespassing now. I wish I can go deep enough that they have not gone. I don't know if you had decided to build in the resource world. That's a choice, I suppose. Casey. Oh, I love you so much, but I cannot be petting you right now. I'm pretty sure I don't go over to Joel. Well, time to go to the other spot. Hmm. Oh, there. Oh, nope, nope, nope. There's a beige on it. There's a beige on it. One. One for your life shadow, one for your life shadow, one. Throw me across, I have no idea why. Just go one. Ooh, a horse. Oh, another thing, I don't think we can get horses over into the city area. Redford. There's my eye right there. And there's goes my deep plate cave. Now that is exactly what I need. Orange yield. We'll collect some of this. And we're going to collect some power salt. that's gravel. I think. Yeah, that's the gravel. I didn't start paying attention much. I was looking at the chat. Oh. Oh crap, hold on. I'm sorry guys. Please ignore the blocking the background. I'm trying to get my cat. I can't get to her to be in my room. That's why. I guess we're on car site. Oh, what the hell just happened here? Apologies everyone. I had to go get my mouse. And on. Okay. That makes it a lot easier now. No, a little bit more of the boss out. Oh, and there goes my pickaxe. Dang it. Of course I'm going to there it is. Oh.
I found her munching away at the grass that was trying very hard to regrow in her stall and then gulping down some water. We repeated the process from yesterday, leading her to the round pen, letting her graze, and then placing tap on her. Still as relaxed as before, I decided I could slip a bridle over her head. She had a quick shake as she got used to the new feeling, but didn't show any signs
Oh, that's not too bad.
I really couldn't help myself. I wanted to ride her so badly, and so far she seemed totally fine with it. So after giving her a moment, I hopped onto her back. From up here, her wings looked ginormous. They were absolutely stunning, and it took a minute to admire them. Other than a quick head shake, she didn't really protest to the new weight, and we began slowly walking around her head. I tell you, I'm still not convinced this was a wild Pegasus. Maybe she became feral after losing her original rider, because there is no way a horse who has never been handled.
Well, this is what I've gotten. I did have to strip all that, but this is not going to be the main. This is not going to be the theme at all. The theme's going to be more dark oak, spruce, deep slate, basalt, all that.
Sure how to ask for flight, but I was kind of hoping she would choose to fly rather than
just scrap that.
Clearly she had no intention of doing that right now, and I chalked it up to still needing to gather her strength. We made our way through the shrubs, being very careful to avoid detection from hungry dragons.
Okay.
The white dragon that I stole from seemed particularly mean, so I gave it a wide berth. We cantered over lush lavender fields, and usually I don't bother with third person, but I was obsessed when I saw how gorgeous her wings looked. I literally couldn't get over this horse. I felt so lucky to have been able to rescue her. Just look at the movement in her wings when she
Well, we're going to go back to Research Road, get some more,
at a steady pace. We reached our destination in no time.
get some
Look at it, this is
wood and stuff.
village, and open waters stretched out as far as
Oh, it's cold.
I did opting to remove her bridle and let her graze since she clearly loved munching grass. The light was fading fast and I dove into the depths to collect kelp. By the time I was done, the night sky auroras had come out and were dancing across the
Whoa.
stars. Usually I would sleep and wait until morning.
Okay.
But I thought there
Wow,
was a chance
something really went all out right there.
meaning we'd actually be safer if we tried to get home now. As we traversed the meadows,
Let me do that. That's fine.
my assumption had been wrong when I saw one flying in the sky. Now, I wasn't paying proper attention, and in the dark, I practically rode right up to the black dragon's nest. Luckily, it was asleep, and I was able to calmly trot away, hoping Seraphina wouldn't whinny or stand on any twigs. We got home safely, and I dried out the kelp in the furnace, making sure I had enough
Let's see.
of everything I could possibly want. In the early hours of day 15, I made barrels so that I could provide water to everyone, dyeing them all sorts of cute pastel colors. I also toasted some leaves to create stall shavings, and even though the floor of the stalls were currently grass, it wouldn't hurt to give the horses an extra soft place to sleep. The rain was coming down now, so I figured now was the best time to deck out the stalls since I had no pasture blankets to turn Seraphina out in. I placed a pastel pink bucket in her stall, equipped with a tap for ease of use, and she showed me her gratitude by swimming in her water source. Thanks for that. Despite clearly wanting a pool, I did cover up the hole with dirt. The rain had stopped before midday, so I turned her out into the round pen so that I could
Ooh,
freely lay
hi.
some shavings in her stall while she grazed out in the sun. Once there was a plush layer of bedding.
Oh, come on. I missed it.
I got up with more building, mostly putting up oak support beams along the stables. Turtle! It's actually a tortoise, but potato. I switched the gates around too. They open inwardly, which was one, unusual for stall doors anyway, and two, meant the horses would get stuck on the gates when I was trying to lead them out, so opening to the aisle was much more preferable. In the afternoon, Seraphina was brought back into her stable, and I think she quite liked the upgrade. If I'm being totally honest, the space probably needed to be one block bigger on all sides, and this was probably the absolute smallest I would go for a sweatable stall. I worked through the night putting in shavings, gates, fences, and buckets to all the stables so that they would be ready for future residents. Seraphina was the absolute cutest when she was snoozing. I really do love the animation the swim horses have, and the details of the wings folding around themselves was so lovely. Sunrise for day 16 was gorgeous. I appreciated it fully before cracking on with the roof once more. I was trying to give Seraphina enough time to recoup and recover because I hope to do some flying with her pretty soon. So in the meantime, I was going to get some of the building out of the way. Of course, she was turned out into the round pen to graze and enjoy the nice weather. I did a harvest of the few crops I had, replanted
This is this complete circle.
my farmland was expanding. Seraphina had a few bushels of hay, which I think she enjoyed. Also, look how cute.
Well, it seems that I am on an island.
I was definitely going to try and go for the rainbow theme for this challenge, since to me,
There's no point in
rainbows
there.
are quite
Ooh,
magical,
but there is.
even though they are really like unicorns and pegasi and dragons. This is the current setup for the stables. I had intended to put hay nets into all of them, but I ended up skipping on that because, spoiler, I kept the grass footing so horses could graze even when they were indoors. I know that's not super realistic, but my horse is a Pegasus, so that's not really what we're going for this time. I crafted a grooming brush and got to bond with Seraphina for a little bit, but even when I caught her with the lead, she still wasn't done munching. Of course, being in the stall didn't stop her from eating around the shavings. You may have noticed I'd moved her to the purple stall, and that was because I think purple was more her colour than pink, so of course, she got a halter to match. After dumping more of my loot into random barrels, I crafted a vet check bag so I could accurately determine the health of any horse. And I was pleased to see Seraphina had missed no drinks and no meals, so I sort of hoped my green light for flight. In the dark, I made a pitchfork and hung it up outside her stall so that when I needed to work out, I didn't have to do it with my hands. Yeah, think about that next time you're picking up horse poop in Minecraft. I bred some cows on the island, mostly just to buff up their numbers, and even though I didn't have a pasture for them yet, it wasn't like they were going to swim away. And so like most mobs in Minecraft, they could float in water, but couldn't actually move forward. To finish the night, I made a crafting backpack upgrade. This basically just adds a crafting table inside your backpack, so you didn't have to faff around and put down a table. Nifty. Day 17, I had a plan. In order to construct the tower in the stable block, my house and any other buildings, I needed white concrete because that's what I was
He's actually changed sometimes, isn't it?
concrete powder, I required sand, gravel, and white dye. I had loads of white dye from all of the bones I've been picking up, plus animals got bones when they died too, so I would only be out collecting sand and gravel. Serafina and I, suited and booted, ready to head off the island. I was hoping the water would encourage her to take off rather than swim, but she actually refused to do either. I didn't want to just give up, so we tried again. This time she jumped into the water. It was like she wanted to take off, but couldn't, so would just jump instead. We travelled past the village and into a meadow that was teeming with dragons. It did seem that they left the wildlife alone as there were families of bison. I noted an empty nest that I assumed belonged to the green dragon who I slayed in the village. After I was done, we carefully moved away through the meadow, avoiding these scaly beasts in the sky as best as we could. I was hoping to find a desert biome as they had the most abundance of sand, but I quickly pivoted after crossing a small marsh where dunes lay between sand and sea. This was probably my best bet, so I hitched Serafina up, noting a bright red dragon in the sky. I also noticed some hippocampuses in the water next to a shipwreck, and while I went over to loot it, I was quickly distracted by the sight of an orange and blue hippocampus swimming in a waterlogged section of the ship. At first, I thought it was cute, but I soon realized this guy couldn't actually get out of the boat. He was swimming around, pushing up against the side that led to the sea, but it seemed his body was too big to fit through a small gap that was submerged in the boat's side, and due to the decayed platforms, it couldn't get a grip in order to pull itself out on land. Of course, I had to help and started working on breaking down the partition between the boat's water and the ocean. If I had to guess, the hippocampus swam in here when it was smaller, but ended up growing too big for the gap, and while its friends or family stayed nearby, they were trapped inside. When the hippocampus was free, it did a few celebratory circles before swimming off to join the others. And while I would have loved to bring it back to my island, where I could introduce it to the hippocampi that live near there, it did seem like this creature was happiest out here.
Yeah, this is not a good spot. Yeah, go find another spot. Oh. Ooh, a cool leaf. There's put that by, or I have no idea.
With another successful rescue complete, I got on with the task of salvage.
Ooh.
Being careful to excavate in natural patterns.
Hopefully, if I spell that wasn't found.
The sun began to set, and I gazed out to the hippocampus swimming by the shore, hoping I had won their favor. Making sure Serafina was crown-tied, I threw my bedroll down and slept through the night. Day 18, I packed up camp and said goodbye to the hippocampuses before jumping on Serafina. We followed the river upstream because most rivers were rich with clay and gravel, which is just what we were looking for. The blood-red dragon we had seen yesterday was circling overhead and making me quite nervous, so I wasted no time diving into the stream and bringing up shovels and gravel. I did have to see some lobsters that sat at the bottom of the river. When When I was happy with my haul, I mounted up across the water, not with the intention of going straight home, but rather going out and exploring the land. There were so many unusual and new biomes that I hadn't seen before, and I wanted to
there's iron right there.
before I had to return to building. Of course, I headed straight for a blue forest because, you know, trees aren't meant to be blue. The excitement was short-lived as the scenery quickly changed into regular forest, which I had to navigate carefully, as I didn't want Seraphina's wings to catch on branches. Then we were spat out by a river again, and the most magnificent mountain stood before us. Not going to lie, I was a little mad that I didn't choose this as my base location. Maybe I could do a part 2 and create like a Pegasus school or something. You have to like the video and tell me in the comments if you want that though. Instead of fighting my way through more trees, I opted to have Seraphina swim along the river. It was slower, but not only was the view clearer for me to see my surroundings, but it also meant I wasn't going to constantly bump my head on branches, all too common with tall swim horses. I did opt to canter where the meadows banked the river, and I was once again in awe of the biome, wishing I had chosen here as my home. This meadow was so open, so beautifully decorated with flowers. I think I've just been so keen to choose a home so I could start saving horses that I didn't spend very much time scouting the area. Then I was back in the river, swimming along. The forest was looking dense on either side, so I didn't have much choice but to continue upstream. Before it got dark, I spotted the lights of the village, where I replaced Seraphina's bridle with a halter so she would be more comfortable and holed up in a church overnight. Day 19, we carefully picked our way through this new village, where I was pleased to see it was intact, unlike the other 3 villages I had come across. I decided to have a wander around to see if there was anything of use.
There's a lot of iron here, but honestly,
I discovered these
I'm not finding any
pastel wisteria-looking trees.
chest
The
cards.
ones in the village were actually
The reason I was kind of having a
following the glaring
brain fog, I can not remember what they're called.
already sunk out of the place. That absolutely sucked. And while following the path of destruction, I noticed there was no fire, so the dragon had probably left a while ago. Until I stepped on a very painful ice shard sticking up from the ground. Nearby, a block of ice was sitting on what remained of a church, and after breaking it, I was surprised it actually dropped. I found out these were frozen splinters, meaning the dragon that came through here was most likely an ice dragon, and there was a possibility it was still nearby. Remaining vigilant, I continued to explore the village, focusing on harvesting flowers and leaves, as these were absolutely going to make my island as whimsical as possible, and these trees were so gorgeous. As I was collecting, I came across a strange white structure. It was blocky and square, but made entirely of quartz, where none of the nearby village had any quartz in its buildings. Investigating further, I found the front of the structure, and inside I was shocked to see a unicorn. It was caged by some pink fences, which was ironic, and it seemed to be tied down on both sides, forcing it to face outwards. I could tell the creature was in poor health due to its headset, and looking into the structure, I was baffled. It had various mushrooms and crystals placed inside, and if I had to guess, the villagers had probably caught the unicorn and made some sort of shrine to it. But instead of learning how to take care of the animal, they just filled its enclosure with a bunch of mystical-looking items. I wish I knew where this unicorn came from and how it came to be in this situation. But the thing had sad eyes, and I knew I had to help them. I learned their name was Solace, and they were a stallion. Their horn was impossibly long and sharp, which was a little intimidating. He also had these big feathers on his feet, which if you don't know is the term used to describe the long hair around a horse's hooves and up their legs. Yep, feathers, like birds. Not confusing at all. The first thing I did was tear down all the fencing and break the ropes tying him down. I watched him for a moment, unsure of how to approach, and eventually he wanted out of the shrine. The poor thing was obviously in need of help, so I leashed him and brought him over to Seraphina, and they met for the first time. I decided the best thing to do was to head home as quickly as possible, and despite the darkness, it was actually going to be pretty easy to travel thanks to the river. In almost pitch black, Serafina swam upstream with me on her back, and Solus ponying behind. He wasn't thrilled at having to swim, but he didn't put up too much of a fuss, probably because he was so tired. In the moonlight we swam, and I used a torch to attempt to see a little better. I was a bit worried about creatures in the water, and while I knew a hippocampus wouldn't attack, I've had problems with crocodiles before, and goodness knows what else might be lurking in the dark. We didn't have a choice though, so we pressed on. Once we reached an embankment, Solus immediately collapsed on the ground.
It was actually pretty abundant in iron.
I couldn't
That's actually pretty good considering I completely lost my pickaxe.
so I swapped her
I should pay attention to its durability and then this would have happened so quickly.
not too far from the two equites. Day 20, we were up at dawn fighting our way through the trees. I wasn't thrilled at having to take this route, but the river wound in the opposite direction and I wasn't sure how far it went, so this was really our only option. I had to dismount a few times to clear trees and leaves so that the horses could actually fit through the gaps, and Solus still held his head low, probably from dehydration and possibly starvation. I was so relieved to see our island with the hippocampuses swimming around the water and my half-finished stable block. After one more river crossing, we were finally home, and Solus was dropped off in a round pen that would serve as quarantine for the next few days.
Okay.
Introducing a horse to a herd, especially rescues that you didn't know the background of, it's important to separate them for a time to help prevent possible disease spread. It can also help acclimatize the new horse to their surroundings and peers. Serafina was put in her stall, wasting no time jumping straight back into grazing once her bridle was off. I would need to make more paddock soon, as right now all I have is the round pen.
Hi, Casey.
That's obviously occupied, so Serafina had no turnout. I was pleased to see Solus had begun grazing. That was a good sign, as eating indicated an appetite. You'd have to worry more if a horse had no interest in grazing. I grabbed a pink bucket from my barrels and set it up in the round pen so that Solus had access to water right away. Unfortunately, the buckets didn't hold much water, so I would have to check it frequently. I stayed in the round pen with him a while, studying him. He was a beautiful creature, snow white coat with spiky, fjord-like yellow mane with yellow feathers to match. And of course, the most beautiful thing about him was
I didn't know that this
his forehead.
sort of has any sort of
Magic or have any special
voice chat.
If he did, he was clearly too weak to use them. I wasn't as worried with him as I was with Serafina, as I don't think he could fly away. Then again, despite her huge wings, neither did she. I took a little bit of time to decorate the stables with pink leaves that I had collected. The place definitely needed more work, but it was starting to come together. I got Solus a pastel yellow head collar that he accepted without fuss, the colour perfectly matching his natural hues. That made me realize he was tame. Either the villagers tamed him, he had a previous owner, or maybe he accepted people who treated him well. I chose to believe in the third option. I gave him a brush which he thoroughly enjoyed, and even though we barely knew each other,
Look over here.
an air of calm that was quite rare in rescue horses. I think there was a chance he knew I had saved him, and that made me wonder if unicorns were especially intelligent. As the sun set, I started tackling my next big task, crafting concrete. I finally had all the materials I needed, and by combining white dye, sand, and gravel, voila!
That was kind of funny. Okay.
All I needed to do was spend a ridiculous amount of time wetting the powder to make
Oh
concrete blocks.
my gosh, wait. I just found. Oh my gosh, wait.
It started coming down pretty hard, and I couldn't just leave him outside in this weather, so even though his quarantine was far from complete, I moved him to a stall that was very far from Serafina's. Hopefully this wouldn't cause an issue, and it got him out of the rain. He settled down pretty quickly, snuggling on in the warm shavings. I then went out to the moat and started building a single tile block of concrete powder. My plan is to break the bottom block which sits in the water, which will cause the powder above it to fall and harden, rinse and repeat. Then I build up really high in order to maximize efficiency, and as you can see, it is ridiculously dark thanks to the cloud cover and rain. I know there's water below me, I just can't see it. So I jump down from my tower and fall directly on a single lily pad, which kills me. Fantastic! I've just lost 10 whole levels of XP. I thought I was going to die from something far more exciting like a dragon attack, but in the end, it was gravity that got me. Eventually, I did get back on track, processing all of my white concrete and starting construction of the stable tower. In the light of day 21, I saw a blue jay flitting around the stables. I hope they would stick around as I quite like the birds. As the rain was bucketing down, both horses stayed in.
How Moss works for this, but ooh, that was close. But anyways, I'm safe. I survived. So that's good. Oh, this was. Oh, someone was down here already. Yeah. Oh, I'd like some diamonds if I can find some.
I checked in on Solace, who was looking much healthier. His head set higher than when I picked him up. He also looked ethereal in the dying sunlight. I topped up his water and he poked his head over the stable doors, which was so sweet. Then I was back to it all through the night. I was laying concrete and wood supports, and on day 22, the second section was pretty much done. I was starting to get a little nervous as the top was much bigger than its base, and I was a little concerned it would end up strange. Solace was staring out of his stable, and if you don't know, my rescue-fueled Leo from 100 Days of the Deadly Winter spent a lot of time staring in a particular direction, which I brushed off at the time, until one day I found a horse freezing in the snow right where he was pointing. So of course I have a look, and other than a mountain plateau, which I slept on day before, there was a red dragon I hadn't seen before. I know I shouldn't have, but I just assumed the dragon was what he was staring at. I keep my eye on him though, and I looked out Seraphina's stable before heading back up the tower and standing on the roof. So far, all the measurements had worked out, but if there were any kinks, it would definitely show in the roof.
Ooh, that would not have been good.
Be careful up here, as falling would either result in severe injury or death. So I basically stayed down between all the time while laying down oak stairs and pillars. In the afternoon, the rain started up again, and both horses were still in their stable from the last time it rained, so I didn't have to faff around with climbing down from the tower. It did make things almost impossible at night though, as my vision was incredibly limited, but I was determined not to waste any time. Over my many 100 days, I've learned that you can get so much done in the night hours, so it's important to make the best.
Not really the pond. I can make a fishing rod. So when I go to the pond.
I was going to keep the oak fencing on the back and sides, but the tabs for the buckets needed a full wall to sit on, and I think it didn't look too wonky. I also put up some lanterns. My goal would be to light up almost the entire island as best as I could, so that working at night wasn't such a pain, but that would take some time. It's day 23 now, and I'm doing my daily chores with the horses, which is usually just brushing them, filling up their water buckets, and scooping poop. I made the cutest pink heart
Let's see.
edges of the tower, and drum roll for the finished look. Ta-da! What do we think? Here is the original inspo. I think I took most of the design from the tower, but it all had my own twist on it. The tower itself was looking a little bulbous at the top, and I was considering extending the stables by one extra stall on the left block to try and balance it out, but it was fine for now. It's giving medieval and fantasy at the same time, which is exactly what I was going for. Plus the palette was super great for mixing in colours like the hanging leaves, and the rainbow gates without it being too busy. Here's an overview of the island. As you can see, I have ample space left for my house and a few paddocks, although I don't think I'll be able to get an arena on here without extending the land, so I'm
Okay.
plan for that. Now I was determined to get a proper pasture in
Oh wow, there's a lot of people here.
completed his quarantine, and him and Seraphina had been cooped up in their stables for the last few days. So I spent the rest of the day and night flattening and extending the land to accommodate that. Day 24, I harvested and replanted
And I'm going to wait for this to load.
full of food growing for the horses.
Have fun. It's on. And free slice sauce prepared or stuffed crust? Yeah, I'm on it.
Oh wow. There's some people, I think that's why it's lagging so bad.
So
Okay, let's
I
see.
have loads of saplings from the pastel wisteria looking trees, so I dotted a few around the island to help bring in that magical, mystical look. The leaves on these trees had a really pretty falling flower effect on them, and I was kind of obsessed. Then I started on the pasture, first grabbing a bunch of leaves to mark out the perimeter. I quite liked how the leaves looked on the ground pen, so I designed the fences around them once I had the shape. While I was putting down the leaves, it looked alright, but unfortunately, one side of the paddock ran along the natural curve of the island, and I was forced to space near the house. So after topping up the leaves with slabs to ensure the horses could escape, I discovered the train wreck that I had created. From
There we
the ground,
go.
it felt claustrophobic, and from the sky, you could see what an absolute eyesore this thing was. Sure, there was enough space for 2 horses, but it was so ugly and clashed quite badly with the uniformity of the stables. That's night, I did everything in my power to rectify this, adding dirt and grass to give me more space to work with.
There's a diamond in there.
While I was laying down some pathing, I was of course focused on that, so it scared the life out of me when this massive dark blob roared, and I quickly realised it was just a bison. This guy had been freaking me out ever since I arrived. This was the first time he actually scared the living daylights out of me, mostly because I couldn't see him. After allowing my heart rate to return to normal, I continued pathing, connecting the stables to the paddock entrance on day 25. Here is what the improved paddock looked like, much better than my first attempt. This time I focused on straight lines and even diagonals rather than weaving and random curves.
It seems like there's a lot of people in the PvP area.
Taken out of it, but extending the land out into the moat would not only be a headache, but could disrupt the wildlife. Speaking of wildlife, I did have to wrangle a tortoise from the paddock back into the water. Not sure how he ended up in there. I decorated the path with stone buttons. This was one of my favourite little bit of hats to make paths 3D and dynamic because they look like little stones or pebbles. I said hi to Solace, who was pointing his head over the gates, clearly bored of being stuck inside. Then I witnessed the bison up to more shenanigans. He would mostly appear and then run away really quickly. Bison had a
There's so many people I can't even tell. Wait, hold on, let me go over there.
jump scare when he did it. I put a pink and blue gate on the pasture. I wish there were rainbow gates to use, but for now I just got to mix and match and make it colourful. Finally, I let Serafina out, and she was the first to try out the new space. The bison followed closely behind, and I can only assume he was a fan of it too. I went out to the wild patch on the island and collected some grass to put in the pasture ground pen, making sure the horses didn't munch on. I wanted to give Serafina a chance to acclimate to the pasture before introducing Solace, so I went about my day doing evening jogs and putting in lights in the tower, planting sugarcane, and reinforcing the roof of the stables. Day 26, I introduced Solace to Serafina over the pasture gate. I assumed at this point that despite his horn being super pointy, he didn't actually use it as a weapon. He stared at her from behind the gate and she didn't seem too fussed, interested instead in grazing. I took out my signal that everything was chill and I allowed him inside. Within moments the two were grazing side by side, clearly content with the company rather than the excitement of a new horse. It probably helps as well that they travelled home together and were stable to the same block for the last few days. The bison was staring quickly as usual. Later that day I called Serafina and got her ready for a compliment. I had seen rainbow glass in my items list, but I needed some sort of special rainbow plant for it. And I was aiming
There's a lot of people here.
I figured the
In
mystical
general.
forest was my best bet. So
Oh, come on, I had a good spot here.
Solace. After some generic flower picking, I did actually manage to find
Oh, wow.
the rose that I was looking for.
Lucy was going crazy.
And after grabbing almost every single plant on the line, we made our way home. Or at least, I thought we were making our way home. It was hard to tell because the trees obscured so much of my vision, and I think I got lost
God.
when I was roses. Darkness fell, and my only option was to climb the hill and stand on the treetops to try and get my bearing. Thankfully, I managed to spot the faint light emitting from inside the stable tower, and that allowed me to reorient myself and aim for home this time. Dragons circled in the night, and I was not keen on letting them see me. We did make it home unscathed, and Serafina popped down into her stable as soon as she was untapped. I was a little disappointed she hadn't absolutely adored the way these look. The colors were slightly pastel, but not super faded. They looked so whimsical, and I quickly filled all the windows in. In the daylight of day 27, I loved them even more, and found they were quite well as stable devices too. I opted to keep the oak fences, but instead of moving the tops totally open, the glass added a
Ooh, what's that?
of color
Barbus.
from the wind.
Oh, it's Raya. I just put it on the chat. Okay.
Experimenting with different colors and styles,
I
and
never.
I stick to quite basic colors. This time, I was going rainbow and
Fish shop. Okay.
to add to my color madness, I started adding leaves to the roof.
I was going to sell them.
Pastel hobbits look. My biggest
Fish
problem is that most of the other
shop.
these
Oh,
were 2Ds.
my eye was not working. Nor did my
I
P.
did this on both sides of the stable, and I liked it.
Aye.
I'm sure I'd go back to touch it up later. So this
Why is that not working?
looking very healthy and happy.
Okay, what?
My biggest issue
I'm sorry, that's hold on. I am getting very confused.
crazy. I had to endure non-stop eating sounds. I mean, it's very excessive. You've got to imagine listening to this
Okay, there you go.
for 3 hours while you build. Day 28, I brought in solace on account of the rain and gave him a good grooming to ensure he was clean. I did also witness a rainbow that went directly over the stables, and I took this as a sign that I was on the right track.
Oh,
I
wow.
decided to spend some time crafting Solace some taps so that I could ride him, settling on a full set of sunshine gear, which I thought was perfect
Emerald.
for his mane and feathers. When I returned, I found a wandering trader admiring my set.
Just to be trying
I
it.
feel quite validated by his apparent awe. Seraphina was turned out, and I hitched Solace outside of the stall to get him ready for his first ride. He accepted the tack, as I realized before he was tame, so I wouldn't be starting from scratch like I did with Seraphina. He looked strapping in his gear. I opted for a bingless cloth bridle and a bareback saddle pad to be as lightweight
A piranha.
as possible.
Hmm.
I brought him into the round pen so that we could begin.
Okay, please stop. You're going to mess me up. Oh, you almost knocked over my Chromebook.
Adultery moment. He
Ooh.
back to me. This was like one step from him
Wait.
lying down for me to climb on.
I'll touch. Wait, Casey. I love you, but you cannot be doing that.
That's nuts. I was
Going to knock my Chromebook off this table. Oh, I love you, but like. Oh, Casey, no. Don't, please. Just go to sleep, okay? Just go to sleep. Go to sleep, please. Casey, please. You're going to knock my Chromebook off. I'm sorry. I love you, but you gotta move. I'm sorry, girl.
Here's a fun fact about unicorns. They are the national animal of Scotland. Pretty cool, right? Do you know what the national animal of your country is? If you do, comment down below so that I can learn too. I searched the brush for many hours, finding sheep and cows and bison, but no chickens. They were much smaller mobs, and my searching had to be more thorough as I may miss them amongst the leaves and bushes. In the dead of night, just as it ticked over to day 29, I found some scurrying around paint trees in the lavender fields. I wrangled them off as best as I could and towed them. All was well until I started struggling with the weeds. See, it was so dark, I couldn't tell if I managed to tie the chickens to the ground, and my signals to Solace became confusing, so he sent me a clear message to knock it off by throwing out a buck. Unfortunately, a few of the chickens were caught by his hoof and probably turned into chicken breast and feathers. Whoops. I got Solace into his stable just
Oh, now I'm
as
lagging.
he was beginning to flood the island, and I hoped he
There
would
you
get
go.
a few hours of rest before having to get up again. I returned to the chickens to find 5 had survived our little mishap, and while I don't know which were male and which were female, I figured 5 was a pretty good gamble to have at least one of each. Using the same materials that appeared in the stable, I started on a freehand coop. I didn't use any references for
Oh, I put it out
this,
too quickly.
doing anything extravagant, but I could at least handle a basic coop on my own. I finished the coop that afternoon and brought its new residents inside. They produced the cutest little baby chick, and I was pretty happy with how the build turned out. They had a little free room area to relax in, a sheltered coop to nest and sleep in, and I even used some of the raven glass to really bring in that fantasy look. That evening, I crafted some bags of sweet feed now that I have eggs, and stored them in the still empty stable tower. I would need to decorate it ASAP. Day 30, I found a wandering trader holding a carton of milk, which made me giggle, and started my daily chores of grooming and turning the horses out to pasture. I was in a billy mood, so I started construction of my house. I had to follow the tutorial very carefully because the design was a little trickier than I anticipated. But after doing the supports, upper walls, and roof, things were chugging along smoothly. Day 31, I had finished the top section, and I absolutely adored these fantasy, witchy, medieval-looking flicks at the edge of the roof. So much so
I have
that
fish.
I did it onto the
Or
chimney
whatever.
and the stables. It was giving Viking a little bit like Nordic, but I think the overall vibe was there. I connected the path from the stables to the house and tried one too many times to place down the front doors. Then all that was left was to fill in the walls, floors, and windows. Here it is, complete. It was definitely on the
Is that a name tag?
for a house, but I've learned that I don't really spend much time indoors.
No, it's a tripwire. Actually, I want to grab it. Because I didn't know of a trick you can use sometimes with tripwire.
And seeing how much everything changes over time. Of course, there is lots more to add, but for now, I think we're more than ready to take on more rescues. The tower has a balcony that I thought would look better with a pile of hay on it, and I was right. I plopped down a huge pile of bales in the paddock too, and Solace got right to work munching on it. I spent the rest of the evening crafting and placing yellow fairy lights around the place, hoping to light up all the paths and pastures without being too obtrusive. Day 32, I woke up to see Solace and Seraphina hanging out together, Unicorn and Pegasus living side by side. Paired with the shimmering lights and the gently falling flowers, I don't think anything could top how quaint and ethereal this sight was. I grabbed Seraphina and got her ready to go for a ride. I was hoping to get some bees for wax so
Oh.
candles, so we walked up to the ground pen before heading out. I still haven't been on the table yet.
Oh,
We
wait,
traveled quite far, hitting the sea and looting a village, finding some pretty cool horse tack up in the tower. I also worked to free all of the butterflies that I found in bottles.
I'm just standing there. I don't know if they're just trying to talk to me or what.
Commander never stops fighting for the state of Florida. I know it. It's Myron Donalds.
Myron Donalds, lower taxes, over Florida.
We fought to make sure that there were no tax on tips, no tax on overtime,
Ooh, an
tax
octopus.
cut on Social Security.
This guy's gonna be a great governor. Myron Donalds, Florida's conservative fighter.
Right, this is the most intense cryptid story from the Appalachia I have ever heard. Oh, side note, how do you pronounce it? Appalachia or Appalachian? Because where I'm from, we actually refer to them as the Appalachian Mountains. But every time I hear about them on TikTok, everyone says Appalachia. So that's how I pronounce it for the majority. Anyway, let's get into it. So one of my followers, their name is Jalen, tells this story from when they were 6 years old. So they're actually from the Philippines. But during this time, the parents had moved them to the Appalachia Mountains. They make note that during the first month, everything was fine living there. They even looked up the rules of the Appalachia, and if you know. And they were abiding by them very closely. So they weren't very concerned. One night while they were eating dinner, the curtains hadn't been closed for the night, and Jalen looked up and saw something outside the window. It was a white, slender figure with its mouth open wide, full of sharp teeth. The texture of its skin looked like fish scales. Its ears were pointy and sharp, and its eyes were dark and wide, almost like void of actually having eyeballs. So immediately they told their parents, but by the time that everybody looked, it was gone. So they just brushed it off, claiming that they
Oh,
were
I just drove luck
so
golden.
and the father goes and
Oh.
locks all the doors and pulls thick black curtains in front of every window. Jalen and mom were already in the bedrooms. Jalen in the bed and the mother folding some clothing and putting it away in the closet. And then Jalen notices something else. The cross that hung near to the closet was upside down. So they immediately tell the mother, and she looks at it, and everybody's really stressed out. So she calls down to the father, but he doesn't respond, which is really weird and unlike him. So the mother quickly goes down to get him, leaving Jalen alone in bed. They're just sitting there, very scared, hoping that nothing else goes wrong. And then all of a sudden, coming from the window in front of Jalen, there was loud banging behind that thick black curtain. Something or someone was trying to get in. So Jalen calls for mom, and she comes flying back up in the room. And this banging is so loud, it sounds like the window is going to break. The mother and Jalen hide
Ooh, a
under the
saddle.
bed, and the father hides underneath a thick black wooden table that sat next to the bed. And then the window shatters and breaks open, and this thing thumps inside the room. They hear the sounds of its footsteps kind of searching for them, and Jalen sees its feet covered in scales, and it had long, sharp brown claws. So they are remaining dead silent as this thing wanders through the room, and when it finally leaves, they can breathe a sigh of relief. So Jalen's father grabs a big plank of wood to barricades off that room window. The mother calms them down, and the father and mother stay up guarding the place while Jalen tries to get some sleep. So the next morning, everybody wakes up early, and the mother is cooking breakfast, and the father is trying to do as much research as possible about the Appalachian Mountains and what that is with it. They are all so shaken and terrified from what happened, and in disbelief, because for that first month, everything was fine. So Jalen says that for the next 3 months, this creature kept on returning to their home. Every time it would come around, it was always exactly at midnight, and it would be pounding on the windows as if it were to get in. So after the 3 months of these recurring visits of this creature, they decided that they are just going to go back home to the Philippines. Even to this day, they are still all very freaked out about it. How freaking traumatizing. Jalen still has nightmares about this thing. Jalen hopes that telling the story might help out other families who could be in danger of experiencing something similar. Have you ever heard of anything that fit that description before? Let us know in the comments. I think we'll be in there reading them. And if you have your own creepy Appalachia story, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
What's up, guys? I'm Master's brother right here, and today I'm going to tell you my very first story time. I had an encounter with a cryptid when I was 13. This is my story. Now, for a bit of context, I spent the first 18 years of my life living in an extremely small town in far eastern Washington. Like, it's so small I hesitate to call it a town. But this town, mostly around the edges, it's a farming community. The town is in a very huge valley. Just there's pastures, hay fields, and surrounding the whole valley is forests and mountains. Right? Well, this happened back in 2008, and being such a small town, word gets around quite a bit, and in a span of about 3 weeks, there were a lot of strange occurrences happening in and around the town. A lot of pets were going missing. There's a couple cats, a few dogs. One of them was a very large German Shepherd. And I even talked to one of the local farmers in the area, and he said that he recently had lost one of his calves. And this wasn't a small calf, it was like a 200-pound calf. And he said when he saw it, when he finally found it, the tracks that surrounded it were these very large canine-like tracks, like maybe a dog or a wolf, way too big to be a coyote. And I was an animal like that. I still am to this day, so I knew my animals. So I thought, well, maybe it was a dog, or maybe a wolf, which was odd because, again, for some more context, there have not been any wolves in that area for many, many years. They've gotten rid of them. Same thing with grizzly bears. There were black bears in that general region, but they were up in the mountains, and they usually never came down this far, especially into town. Same thing with mountain lions. There's usually there's a huge dog coming through the farms and even within the towns.
There you go.
The town, I'm sorry. And
I think for now I can go back to the city.
and right next door to where I live, there's this huge plant where they make special sand. And there's also a river, a decent sized river that runs through the whole valley that's right alongside the plant and right in front of my house. Right? And I used to go up and down this river with my youth bow and my arrows, and I would just shoot like dirt mountains and stuff like that. Well, within the span of these 3 weeks, one day I went to that plant. I was walking up the river and I went up onto the plant. I was walking along, and in front of me I saw something weird. It was a large pink mound. And the closer I got to it, I noticed it was moving up and down, and it was breathing. And when I got to it, I was horrified. It was a sheep. It was just covered in blood. The poor thing was still alive, and it was in so much pain it couldn't even get up and run away. Which was odd because, again, word gets around. I know the people in the area. There wasn't a sheep anywhere near this town. The closest one was probably a good 4 miles away. So something attacked this thing and drug it pretty far away, as far as I know, because there's no sheep anywhere near this town. And I was 13 at the time. I didn't know what to do. So I just got the hell out of there, told my parents about it, and I think my mom called the plant, told them about it, but I couldn't remember. And so the next day, I decided to go back to that spot. I went, oh, and I was going up and down the river. I went back to the plant where I saw the sheep out of curiosity, and the sheep was gone. So I figured, okay, maybe the plant workers moved it, or whatever, attacked it, came back to claim its kill, and that was that. So I was like, okay, and I turned around and I started making my way back, and I made it about 30 steps, and I looked to my left, and just across the river, in the pasture, I saw 5 deer standing out there. They were about 100 yards away. 2 of them were looking at me, and in fact, they all took turns looking at me, and they'd go back to grazing, but they weren't worried about me at all. And I'm sitting there looking at them for about a minute before 2 of them lifted their heads, looked south, because I was looking west, looked south. At the edge of the pasture, there's this tall, huge, this patch of tall yellow grass that went clear across the river. And they're looking over there, and they snorted. Now, for those of you who don't know, when deer are alarmed, when there's danger nearby, when they notice it, they make this loud alarm snort. And it kind of sounds like a loud, exaggerated coughing sound.
Fixed it.
And I heard 3 snorts before all of them just flipped their tails up and took off running. So I'm spooked up, right? So I'm like, I look over to where they were looking, in between the tall grass, and I could just see this flash of black moving in between the foliage. And it was moving towards the plant where the sheep was, where I just come from. And I'm looking, and just a few seconds later, I finally saw it. Coming up over the silica mound was, at first, what I thought was a dog, but it wasn't a dog. If it was a dog, is to date the absolute hugest dog I've ever seen in my life. It was bigger than a Great Dane, bigger than any dog I've ever seen to this day. But again, it wasn't a dog, but it wasn't a wolf either. It was some kind of canine, but it was just wrong. Its fur was blackish gray with a few streaks of a shade of gray that was like almost bluish, kind of like a heel or a blue or something like that. It had a really stocky upper body with thick, jagged fur around the shoulders and the neck area, kind of like a small mane. Its lower back was hunched, kind of like a hyena, and it had this really thick, bushy tail. It had stocky limbs, walked on all 4s, and its snout was weird. Like most dogs and wolves, they have their snout, there's their forehead, and then the snout comes out like this. This was more of like a straight profile that really went out lengthily. Kind of like a boar. Like its snout was boar-like, but it had the same black nose and canine snout, you know. It was weird. It had these short, pointed ears, and the thing was huge, and just its presence just felt haunting looking at it. The thing came up and it was sniffing the area where the sheep was. I guessed this was maybe what had attacked the sheep. And eventually the thing looked at me. It lifted its head and looked right at me. I'm clenching my bow in my hand, and I was terrified. I didn't know what this thing was. I didn't know what to do. Like, I don't know how many seconds or minutes went by of me just locking eyes with this thing. And even from, I'm like 30 yards away, and with the sunlight on it, I could see its eyes. They were like a light brown color that almost looked red. Those eyes were just piercing into me. Had these reddish, light brown eyes right at me. And then, after what felt like forever, it did something weird. The thing whips its head back, almost like a horse, and it let out the weirdest noise I've ever heard come out of any canine. Like, it wasn't a howl, it wasn't a bark or a growl. It was like a mixture of the three. It was like, it was the closest thing I could compare it to is the sound of made wolf makes.
It's not pre-made, it's handmade.
We make a
Residents can buy a day and a second day free. So one-day park-to-park rental ticket to Universal Studios Florida.
okay, I'm gonna make a shield. I think that'd be good and safer in general.
Furniture is on sale now at Farmers Home Furniture. Incredible deals for $38.
Okay.
Choose the Farmington sofa, Charlie Black 3-piece queen bedroom package, or Portia Taupe reclining sofa. Step up for $48 a month.
I think
Storage setup with US chip.
with the glass and everything, I'm gonna get off for a little, maybe,
Built to last.
or start recording Mega S&P.
Accessories.
Not sure yet.
General offers complete storage solutions, so you can take your garage to the next level. US serious tool storage, serious value, only at Harbor Freight.
Thanks. But clearly this thing wasn't a made wolf, obviously. And after that, it just turned around and slowly walked off. Just didn't run, just walked away. And after it was out of sight, I got out of there. And I can remember that very night. See, our neighbors down the road, they had this dog that barked every single night. Literally every single night. But that was the one night he would bark. I thought I heard it at one point, but it seemed like something was keeping it quiet. And so, again, I didn't know what it was, but after a few years of getting into cryptids, learning about dinosaurs, modern animals, and ones that aren't discovered yet, I heard about a particular cryptid out of Montana folklore that matches the description of the MO exactly of the creature that I saw. Again, I can't 100% confirm exactly what I saw, but to be honest, I'm fully convinced that that day I had an encounter with the Shunka Let me know what you lads think, and this is Brother Red signing off. Let me know what you think in the comments.
This one right here is one of the most incredible cryptid encounters ever documented. 7 people saw a 10-foot tall creature, and multiple witnesses got physically sick from exposure to something toxic in its vicinity. It's September 12th, 1952. You're a kid in the Flatwoods, this is West Virginia, when you see something that just streaks across the sky and crashes into a nearby hill. This bright red floating rock looks kind of a meteor. You and 6 others grab flashlights and hike towards it. Just to where it landed, your dog runs ahead of you. As you get closer, this strange mist kind of hangs in the air and smells awful. Sulfur and this burning metal smell. Your eyes water and your throat burns. Your dog comes running back, whimpering. You see a glow through the trees, pulsing red and orange. Then your flashlight hits something between 2 trees. It's at least 10 feet tall, dark green body shaped like a hovering bell, a massive round head, blood red shape like the ace of spades, with these glowing orange eyes. There's no arms, no legs, it's just hovering there, hissing. Then it turns slowly towards you, and your group screams and runs. That smell is still burning in your lungs. The sheriff would investigate that night and find that there were skid marks, and that smell is still there, but there were no creatures. The next day, though, you get sick. We're talking nausea, throat swelling, vomiting, symptoms of toxic exposure. The military shows up, the Air Force, investigators interview everyone. Project Moonbone's conclusion: you saw an owl. What? But some people saw it. People got physically ill. This is the Flatwoods Monster. You know what I'm talking about. This is one of the most incredible cryptid UFO encounters in American history. What do you think they saw? Because I know damn well it wasn't an owl. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. See you in the next one. Peace.
The oldest well-known cryptid sighting probably goes back thousands of
I would like to keep the bones to tame a wolf. I don't know how I'm going to give wolf 2 this roach. I'm just going to use it for bone meal. I need the oak logs. I need oak to at least finish this build.
It's been around, I think, for thousands of years. Now, the largest cryptid sighting, the earliest, I should say, that really made headlines was that of Spring Hill Jack in London. Now, Spring Hill Jack is this very old legend. It goes back to the 1800s. Now, at this time, London was a very creepy place, and people often reported late at night as they would walk the streets of London, they would see ghosts, and they would see a lot of strange stuff. In 1804, there's this man, and he gets up and work really late one night, and he's walking through the streets of London. He goes past this church graveyard, and he said he hears someone calling his name. And he said it just got louder and louder. So finally he walks over to the cemetery to see what this is. And he said that's when something jumped out from behind one of the tombstones and grabs him and starts trying to pull him down to the ground and is choking him. Another man happens to come by, and this thing just takes off into the air. And that became the first sighting of what people describe as Spring Hill Jack. Another infamous sighting was in the 1840s when there was a woman who was walking late one night down the streets of London. And she said,
I'm going to put this last bit of wood down, and then I think I'm going to in for this server, unless the nut tree has grown. Now my nut tree has grown.
And she said he jumped over to her, into the air. He grabs her, throws her against the wall, rips some of her clothing, and starts scratching her face. Finally, he lets go and he takes off into the air. And this became a sight of Spring Hill Jack. And from that point forward, there were hundreds of reports of this man-like creature that was jumping through the streets late at night, going in front of horse carriages, causing them to crash, causing people to disappear. And some people even speculated that Spring Hill Jack was none other than Jack the Ripper. And what's interesting about Spring Hill Jack is that when you look at some of these descriptions, it reminds me of Mothman. So what do you think?
Coming at you guys with another true paranormal
typical story, but this one is about the Appalachian Mountains. Now, obviously, the people in the story, I gave different names due to privacy reasons, and I conversed back and forth with them, and they told me their story, and I truly feel like the story is very believable. I talked to them a couple different times. They never ever changed their story, and they seem like very genuine people, and you can tell that they are still freaked out and scared.
Okay, I think that's good for today. We've been recording for like almost 2 hours maybe. Not sure, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it wasn't too much. I might off camera gather some more stuff, find more things to do and to use, and then record my finishing of the house and maybe even starting a farm and possibly starting my next build. Not too sure, but the next video that I post, which might be tonight, is going to be a Minecraft movie. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!